Hello, I am super excited. Whatever time of the zone you're in, be lunch, middle of the day, late afternoon, whatever, to be hosting this new launch of Herstory Live. Many of you might recall back in the summer months, Susan Benavides and I put our heads together and decided that we wanted to do anything, right? We were going to disrupt a few things that we do. And so with that, we launched our Herstory Making Herstory LinkedIn group. And the intent was really to get out and tell stories about other women and elevate them that is different from their professional life. So we chose today as it's American Women's Business Day as our launch for Herstory Live. And before I introduce you to our wonderful artists with us, I do want to say that I give a shout out to Ben Cross at Love and Reload, because when we decided we wanted to tell the stories live, I thought, who's a better promoter in our industry than Ben Cross? And so we created this great partnership where we will now do Herstory Live, powered by Love and Reload. And the spirit and intent for us is that we will host a session every other week. We've got themes, content themes throughout the entire year. I'll give a little bit more of that when we get to the end of our time. But without further ado, super excited. Thanks to everybody for taking 30 minutes away from your day to share with us. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'm going to turn it over, but we've got three distinguished featured artists, Bridget Ritchie, Meredith Morris, and Misty Gregaric. So with that, Bridget, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you just introduce yourself?
Well, thanks, Peggy. So for those who don't know me, Bridget Ritchie, I have been in the industry for about 27 years, and I like to describe myself in one line, and I've used this for years. I'm a single, working, traveling mom. So it sounds simple when you say it that way, but each one of those descriptors really presents challenges in and of themselves. So I've spent my years trying to marry that all together and be present in my children's lives and still climb the ladder and be present in the industry. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. Is just a little bit about my story. So in the beginning, it was hard. I did not travel. I was at work. They didn't have those flex work schedules 27 years ago. So you just kind of had to work harder and smarter and be very acutely aware of every PTO hour that you had to use them. But I will say I successfully was able to be room mom, den leader, uh, ice cream social chairperson, PTA mom. I did it all in addition to the work world, also being in events and volunteering on committees and trying to get known. So it was definitely a juggling act. So how did I juggle it? Well, I had to first accept that I was going to miss things, and I had to be okay with that and not feel like I was being judged by other moms or that I was letting my children down. What I also did is I made sure to involve them to make sure that they were part of my journey. But the missing things was the hardest. As fellow moms, as parents in general, I don't know if you recall the things you missed. I will never forget the very first key thing that I missed was a Halloween parade at school. So
Wow.
I had to be at ERC in Washington, D.C., and I missed getting them dressed as the pirate and as Harry Potter. I was looking at pictures through my phone, missing the bingo and orange and black cupcakes, and I missed it. I cried in my hotel room, wiped my tears, went and met with clients like nothing happened. But today, you look back on those things, and my children don't remember a specific thing that I missed. They remembered things that I was there for, things that I did. So again, bringing them as part of my journey, I made sure that every RFP that I worked on, I talked to them about. And I told them what a company did and what the services were. I told them that every time I won an account, I brought them in on my journey. So they got to a point where we'd be driving down the road and they would say, look, mom, that's ABC company on the side of that road. Do you have them? Do you work with them? So they kind of made it, we were the Three Musketeers together, and they had their own little Three Musketeers thing going on with their dad as well. But they understood that if I had to leave them at dad's for an extra 2 days, that they understood why, that what I was doing was all together, we were in it together. So, and every time I had a success, I shared it with them, speaking on panels, getting an award. And then they would also share things with me. So as we grew up, they did the same thing, high school, college. They shared their successes and questions. It became a journey together. So the best way I can say is, or I would say the lesson learned now that I have a 23-year-old and a 28-year-old, both of their own careers and their own jobs, and now their struggles, is if you're trying to have it all or do it all, you have to know that there are going to be times when you're going to have to select the children's play over the big meeting, and there are times that you're going to have to select the conference over the child's baseball game, and you have to be okay with that. And as long as your children understand the bigger picture, you'll get through it. I always worked with companies who believed in family first. So as a leader, I've always tried to treat my colleagues the same way. And I think that's sort of been the key to my success anyway.
You know what, Bridget, I love all that. And I don't know if you're seeing, and we'll get some comments put up in here, but we had a couple of people, Christine talked about missing Halloween with her kids because of conferences and things along those lines. But I love how you said to give yourself grace and forgiveness through this, and that your kids didn't matter. And really what you did was you gave them the best, like on the job learning by taking them, and they recognized companies' names. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, one of the first things that I gave up was lunch, because I didn't want to be stuck at the office. So I stopped eating lunch. I'm like, no, I want to get home to my baby. And people were like, what's wrong with her? Turns out that's not a bad thing. I should carry that through into adulthood now that my daughter's older. But we'll come back, you know, so much great stuff, Bridget. Thank you for kicking us off and sharing your story. And you do have two wonderful sons, Jack and Matt, and I love it. And I hope that you find grace in everything that you did to make them the young men that they are today. But so Meredith, we'd love to hear your story.
Fantastic. Well, first, thank you for having me here today. And I just got to give a quick shout out. Hey, hi, LinkedIn world. I'm so glad everyone that's joining. So I'm thrilled to be here. So let me do a quick introduction of myself. And Bridget, it was wonderful to hear what you just said as well. So, you know, thank you for sharing that. So I'm Meredith Morris, and I'm actually based in Houston, Texas. I'm a native Houstonian. I am also the mom of two boys. I actually have a senior in high school and a sophomore. So they keep me incredibly busy as well. So totally understand that. Kind of lived a similar thing to Bridget. You know, I think many of us that are in the workforce and have families and are juggling careers, we all make tough decisions and have to find that work-life balance. So I'm in that same place. And to share a little bit about my story, it's a little bit different. I've had some challenges throughout my career and looking to climb that ladder. One of my most recent, and this year has been a little bit crazy for me, but you know, I did have the support of my husband. My husband and I were married for 23 years, together for 25, and I recently lost him to COVID in May. So now I have a new logistic, and in the same time frame, I started a whole brand new career with this incredible company. And while my husband was fighting for his life, here I've started this new career, and the amazing CEO who I report to was very agile. So kind of to your point, Bridget, you know, the company really got behind me. And even though I'm this new employee, you know, and I'm in this higher level role, it really presented, you know, there was a lot that balance between, you know, between family and between work. Hey, Paula Holloway, shout out. So so my story is a little different, but we can circle back to that, Peggy, and I'll let Misty go ahead and tell a little bit about herself and intro herself. And, you know, I'm glad to talk about my career and the challenges that I've faced and where I've gone.
Well, right before we turn it to Missy, I just want to say, Meredith, you are an inspiration, and the story of Todd and all that you went through. And I remember every Thursday you and I would check in on that journey, and just know that your voice and the inspiration that you bring to many is profound. And, you know, I'm so glad that you found an organization that lifts you up and supported you through an incredibly difficult time. And that's how you know you're in the right place, right? So as Ben, our beloved leader of Love and Reload, much love, Meredith, there's so much. And just know that just those few words means a lot to a lot of women out there. So thank you for sharing that. We will come back. But Misty, we would love to hear more about you and the challenges and your story.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's so great to be here. I love seeing the comments too. I've seen a few comments from people I know, and that's just like, it gives you extra energy to do this. But I am a mom. I have 3 daughters that are fairly close in age. So they are 12. Well, I have a 12-year-old and then who just started middle school, which is a whole new world for me. And then I have 9-year-old twins. So it's always an interesting challenge. We live in a great neighborhood. Our girls go to the community school, which is so great. Have lots of friends and other moms. So we've got our mom tribe that helps you get through. In fact, one of them's picking up my daughter today to make it to the volleyball game because I'm here at work. And so we sort of last night at 11 o'clock, we're like, teamwork makes the dream work, right? All your neighborhood moms and tribe moms. But, you know, I started this journey. I started in retail and never really thought I would have a career like I have. So yes, mom guilt for sure. I was just planning on being a mom, quite honestly. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have a house full of boys, and I have all girls. So funny what the world gives you, right? And I found this great opportunity with the company that I currently work for. I've been here for 15 years, and I slowly progressed. And then at one point, I thought, well, I'd like to have some kids, and so we struggled having children, which I think, you know, lends itself to even more mom guilt. So we had our first daughter, and then we went back for some more fertility treatments and had our twins, which, you know, then you're like, oh my gosh, now I have I have a 2-year-old and infant twins. Thank God I had my mom, who at the time was like, if, you know, these other women can do it, you can do it. And she's like, you're going to go back to work. She kind of pushed me back out of the nest. I think she just wanted more babies to snuggle during the day after she retired, which was so great for me. But, you know, having children, small children, and having a career, and I used to travel a lot. There's not a lot more traveling anymore right now, but, you know, having to juggle all of that, right? And pick and choose the things that you want to go to and the things that you can go to, but also a big part of my role is teaching other women to advocate for themselves. So really teaching my girls to advocate for themselves and how to be good sisters, because that is its own special struggle, but really having to kind of pull through some of those things that I'm seeing with employees and people in my company and pull them through to kind of teach my daughters how to behave and work with each other and advocate for themselves. So it's been an interesting journey to see what your work, sort of how those themes cross over to your children. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, Misty, thank you for sharing that and your own personal journey to want to have the family. And I'd love to hear from our artists today, you know, that decision, you know, we went through it as well. Like, is now the right time to think about this family, but my career is going, like, how did each of you wrestle with that? You know, like I get so worried for other women that suspend becoming a mom because they're so worried. So curious, how did anybody?
I'll start. So, you know, my husband and I, we weren't going to have kids, but guess what? We had 2. So I really, surprise. But anyway, so, you know, it was really a blessing. And I tell you, it was really, really tough because I was that career woman. So I had my kids a little bit later in life. I know I don't look like it, but I did. And, you know, and my kids were daycare babies starting at like 7 weeks old. And leaving my first one, that was the toughest. But, you know, it was finding that balance. I had a goal for myself. I had a vision of what I wanted. And I'll tell you, over the years, my career has pivoted and changed. And I've made some decisions within my own self and where I was going to elevate myself. And I'll tell you, I did. I've read some articles and things, but, you know, I was one of those women that actually took a step back in my career about 7 years ago. I mean, I ran multi-million-dollar organizations. Wow. I led teams of 20 plus people. I mean, I had P&Ls and, you know, I had things on my head, but I stepped back to learn a whole new industry, which is the RMC space and a new vertical, because I felt like that would be a good choice at the time to elevate my career. And you know what? Every job I've had has lended myself to that. So it was tough. I go back to Bridget and Misty. It's tough balancing being part of your kid's life and being there and being present. And now, you know, I have that single mom status, which I never thought I'd be elevated into. And now I'm like pulling triple times the work. And I will run myself ragged to make things happen for both my personal and for my professional. Because I love what I do and how I feel professionally and how I've elevated my career and the hard work that I've put into it. This is my passion, but I'm also passionate for my children as well, and to make sure that they're successful, just like Bridget and Misty were saying. So it was a hard balance, Misty. It was a hard balance, Peggy, and we're working on it. We're getting there, but I think it's amazing how we're able to pull it through. And there's many other women just like us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. Bridget, you or Missy, either of you want to talk about, when you decided for the family and what that was like?
Yeah. So I'm a little bit opposite of Meredith. I had children very young, but like Misty, I grew up wanting to be a mom. People would say, "What do you want to be?" I didn't say firefighter. I didn't say what I said. I want to be a mom. So I was, but that presented its own challenges with everybody. I had young teams I worked on, and everybody was going out and drinking and having fun, and I was just trying to, make it to daycare on time, before the pickup, and that was always an issue. Meredith, I'm like you. My children went to daycare very early, especially my second one. And when moms often say, "I want to be home with my children, especially for the first year. I don't want to miss their first step."
Yes.
What I think moms don't realize, and maybe us older moms can say, is your children are not going to remember whether you were there for their first step, and you're still going to see a first step for you. But if you can balance it, they will remember if you are there for their, key games or graduation, graduations, things like that. So, but yeah, it's been a balance from the beginning, and I respect and admire every woman for doing it, and every man. I mean, I know this is about women today, but juggle it too.
You know what, Bridget, that's a great point, because, Ben has been so gracious, again, to allow us to use his platform for this. But more importantly, he's commented a couple of times in here with some things, and he's talked about, there is mom's guilt. I think there is an equal thing for the men too, right? That comes into play. And you had a unique situation because of your divorce. And so you had to be the best woman, mom for your kids, be the best person at your job, and be the best ex-partner for those. So that's got its own set of challenges, right?
Yeah, it does. And I've said this in other venues and for other reasons, but co-parenting when you're a divorced person is so key, because it is you truly putting your children first. And so when you have two people who have careers and ambitions, and by the way, we need to have that anyway to provide for the children, you can't be in competition as to who was at what thing and who did what. You have to be there for each other and be there for the children and co-parent very well. So, I'm very proud of how we both did that to get through. So that, that was my unique thing, is not only being a mom, but being divorced. It's hard. You have to swallow a lot of pride.
Yeah, no, good for you. Missy, how about from your lens? You talked about the struggle to get pregnant, and yet you were in this career. And so talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. It was definitely something that I wasn't expecting. Everyone talks about how easily it is to have a family. And here we were, I think I was, 29 or 30, and it wasn't happening for us. And so I went to my doctor, and she referred me to somebody else. And so started going, and I think I was 30, but I distinctly remember the doctor saying, "Well, you're kind of, older." And I was like, "What? I'm only 30. But really, it was a lot of early morning appointments. And I'm lucky that I worked for a company that, they didn't know it at the time, quite honestly, that I was going through that. I really wanted to be professional and separate, my personal life from my work life, which I've learned now doesn't exist. We're all people. And so our personal struggles do come to work sometimes, but it's a matter of like how you get through them. And so then when we got pregnant with our first daughter, and then decided I wanted to come back to work, because I love what I do and I love our people. And again, I wasn't expecting this career. I wasn't expecting to find a company that I loved. And so really just kind of continuing to progress. And then we wanted more kids. And so we went back again, and then we were surprised that we were having twins. That was a surprise, but a lovely surprise in general. And they actually told us we were having boys. And then,
oh my God,
they were like, "Wait a second, it's girls." And we were like, "Oh my goodness." So that was, that was an interesting challenge too. I think my husband turned totally white, like three daughters. Oh my goodness. But, I had a great supportive team at work and at home, really. I couldn't have done it without, my husband was great. He kind of ran his own business, so he could show up to the things, luckily, that, I couldn't. And my company was great. There were times where I was in meetings and they would say, don't you have somewhere to be? It's time for you to go. Yeah. And they'd kind of scoop me out the door, which is really nice. And then also just being able to repay that to the people that I work with now, like, getting to know them personally and being able to say, isn't it time for you to go? Like, it's about helping each other and figuring out how we can make it all work, not just for me, but for the other people I work with and the other moms in my life too. I have lots of moms in my life that don't have family, that live close. So we are there. We call them family. They're like friends, they're your family. And so, like I said, picking up kids, sharing in carpools, doing what we can to sort of make it all work, regardless of what kind of career you might have or where you're at, or even if you're a stay-at-home mom, like you need time for yourself too. That's probably one of the biggest things I think I recently learned. My kids are transitioning into that older age where it's like, oh, nobody needs me right this second. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. I guess I can watch a TV show, and then you turn it on and immediately your kid comes in and is like, hey mom, I want to snuggle. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm not doing that anymore. So, it's been an interesting transition, the ages of my kids too, to now. Yeah. I do have a bit more time and noticing the importance of yourself and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. I think that's something as women we forget too. We're so busy taking care of other people in our lives, we forget about ourselves.
Yeah. Misty, I love how in all of your commentary today, you've talked about weaving that through into women maybe having a greater empathetic lens. Not that men don't, they absolutely do, but because of this, it is different. And, again, I think it was Ben just a second ago that had a great question in here. And I want to throw it out to all of you. And he said, well, what can we do as women in there? Yeah, exactly. What advice would we give to men that are working alongside us in the workplace? And we are a pioneering generation. I'm a little bit older, I think, than a couple of ladies on this call. And that, my mom didn't work, but both myself and my husband did. So we're this pioneering generation of dual careers. Yeah. So I'd love to, let's address what Ben said. How can we, help men?
I can speak to that, or I can offer my thoughts at any rate. I believe empathy is the key word. And I think that's not only for men to women in the workplace, but, single people to people with children to, people who are caring for ailing parents. I think we all have our own struggles and our own buckets. And if you're just empathetic to why this particular person needs time off, this person, it's because they have a kid's game. This person, it's because they're visiting their parent in a nursing home. This dad, maybe coach of a team. I think if we all just show each other a little respect and don't act like, well, single people can do, or single non-parents, they just have all the time in the world. They should be able to do this. Everybody has their things that takes up, that rounds out their life. And so you're not just work, but you have other things going on. And I think if we're just all empathetic to each other. So I think if men can just understand that women aren't just trying to get time off, or they're not just having a frazzled day because of no reason. It's because of our balancing act. That would be helpful.
Yeah. I loved your comment there about rounding out our lives, because there are many women colleagues that we all know who either chose or could not have children, but have pets or elderly parents. And so it's having that perspective that it's more, you don't just have to be a mom, and it's not just about being the mom. It is this other aspect that we often bring in. So I appreciate your kind of sharing that a little bit, Bridget. But, any Missy or Meredith, your thoughts for our male colleagues that we work alongside?
I don't mind. I'll go. I'll answer. So, raising two boys and having an all male household, I would say from my point of view, and I appreciated what Bridget said. So, there's empathy and respect. She did mention that. But I also think that, we're all wired just a little bit differently. So I would say from my perspective, it's having inclusivity. And I think being open and, for others to really embrace all people's thought processes. So it wouldn't matter if you're male, female, whatever, whatever you may be. I feel like everyone has a valid point. So if you're talking in the workplace, I feel like being able to just embrace that thought process, cut through the boxes and, think about what's being said. I feel like that would be a really good key to moving forward and for men in the workplace, because it's not just a woman having a bad day. Everybody has bad days. Everybody has challenges, but just being able to embrace that and listen and include all thought processes, I think that makes the big difference, and probably for all workplaces.
I love Jamie Masler in our comments has said he's taking pointers already. So there you go. He's taking
I
some
love
pointers.
it.
Yeah. So
one
Missy,
thing I'll share
yeah.
really quickly is that I think as I'm sitting here listening, what's helped me through the years too is that when I hear a male coworker or colleague say, I have to leave because of X, Y, and Z, it almost makes it a little bit more acceptable, right? So I do think the being able to listen and understand and be empathetic, but also sharing about their lives, I think is helpful to be like, okay, well, we are the same. Like, you may not be taking care of a child, or maybe you are, maybe it's a parent, or like somebody else said, a pet. I mean, that's a whole new challenge that we're coming up against, right? Is aging parents, and how do you deal with that? Sometimes that's more work than one of your children or a pet. So having to think through all of those challenges as well can be difficult.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It is so hard to believe my lady artist here, my featured artist, but we're almost to the end of our time. So I want to do two things. One is that I, first off, absolutely want to thank you all. We still have a closing question, so you don't get off the hook that quickly. And thank you for being a historic part of launching Herstory Live and being our featured guests and artists on this American Women's Business Day. It means a lot to me personally. I thank you for that. The second thing is that to our friends that joined us, thank you. This wouldn't be worth it if I didn't feel the passion coming from everybody in their comments and those that can join. Please do consider joining our LinkedIn group. It's Making Herstory. The URL is there. Lastly, I will say that we are launched in October. On October 6th, we'll be doing our cancer show. And so we've got a couple of fun artists that are going to join us. But in the future, if you ever want to be an artist on one of our Herstory Live, please send me a note. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me through the Herstory, Making Herstory page, or just in general. So I appreciate that. But with that, I want to end with our famous artists, because that's really what this is all about. And my question to each one of you is, what advice would you offer to a young female today? And young can be defined at whatever age you'd like for that to be. So Bridget, we opened with you. I'm going to start with you for our close.
Well, I wish I had something that seemed extremely original and profound, but a very succinct way to say it is, don't stress over everything. You will find that when your children get to the ages of 23 and 28 or older, or when you move on to the next phase of your life, you will realize those little things that you worried about every day, they all work out. And I even asked a couple of young 20-somethings at a college weekend this past weekend what advice they'd like to hear. And they both said, we don't want to stress about little things. So we're trying to do that right now. So they already had it.
Love it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Meredith.
Great. So I had a whole list, but since we're at time, I would say, probably two good pieces. Number one, don't ever let anyone tell you can't. Don't. And I would say the second thing is, don't let your job define you. You define who you are. So those would be my pieces of advice.
Thank you. I love, love, love that. Don't let your job define who you are. There's a great book called Working Identity, which sort of deals with that. So thank you. Missy.
Yeah, mine is very simple. It's really learn how to advocate for yourself in whatever area, part of life that you're in. And it's going to always be different, but that skill I think is really critical.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. I love you all. And I can't tell you how much this means to me. So go do good in the world and go make Herstory.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Peggy.
Bye, everyone.